Something that really struck a chord with me yesterday was when you opened that panel talking about how so many of us are here because of medical emergencies or challenges or a loved one who's going through something. And that hit home for me. And that's the reason I'm here. And it was incredible to see the response in the crowd. Everyone seemed to resonate with that.
Well, when you look at the agricultural countryside, at the Acres conference a couple of weeks ago, and these slides were then shared on social media, people can look them up, but she shared these maps that showed the incidence of certain types of cancer overlaid with the maps of agricultural countryside and pesticide applications. And there's this perfect map correlation with specific types of cancers and specific types of metabolic illnesses overlaid with the degree of pesticide use. And you look at that and you say, right, the people in the countryside are the sickest people we know. That's the opposite of what should be true. And so, there's so many things that I could talk about here, but I have a couple dozen books on my shelf that talk about the impact of pesticides on the human body. And we recognize that from a human metabolic health perspective, one of our most sensitive systems within our body is our endocrine system, our hormonal system. It regulates everything else. It's one of the foundational regulators. And the majority of pesticides function at their defined mode of action in the case of insecticides in many cases is as endocrine disruptors. They are endocrine disruptors. Fungicides, herbicides, all of these are endocrine disruptors. And it was startling to me to discover how effective these compounds are, like within our body. I forget who pulled this data together, but someone from a medical background, they described that if you pulled the hormones together from all the ladies alive today on the planet and you put them together in one physical location, you would have a total of 70 pounds. No, sorry, this is a mistake. This is for the guys. 70 pounds represents the total quantity of endocrine hormones in the entire male population of the planet. The ladies are 1/10 of that. They're 10%. Their total endocrine system is regulated by 7 pounds of material. And that's one of the reasons why, in many cases, ladies, and I shouldn't say many cases, but in some cases, ladies can be more sensitive, and they are become sensitized to some of these compounds earlier because it takes less to disrupt their endocrine system. And so when you look at the prevalence of cancers of the reproductive system, that's the endocrine system. And when you tie all the reproductive systems together, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, that's a significant percentage of total cancer incidence. And that's what's prevalent in the agricultural countryside.
Yeah. My wife lost her thyroid when she was 24 to thyroid cancer. And so this is so meaningful. Would you mind sharing the story of your dad, your father, that you shared yesterday? That was such a good dad, such a good father. Oh, would you mind sharing that?
Well,
Amazing.
I think the essence of that story, the one piece that I come away with is that I truly believe everyone desires to do the right thing. And in his case, it was, as is true in many cases, he was simply ignorant. He didn't know. And so the story is, when I was growing up on the farm, my father was a pesticide distributor, as well as he was the local distributor for all kinds of inputs, fertilizers, seeds, equipment, etc., for the fruit and vegetable growers in the region. And he had a pesticide distributor's license. And as a result of that pesticide distributor's license, there were pesticide salespeople in and out of our driveway every week. And we were the first farm in the region to use all the newest, latest, and greatest cocktails. And then I received a scholarship to attend the Acres USA conference, and my father and my brother went with me. And in addition to the conference, we were also gifted the opportunity to attend Dr. Arden Anderson's 3-day pre-conference intensive course. And the first day of that 3-day course, Arden spent systemically demolishing pesticide use. And of course, with his background, he has a degree in agronomy, he has a PhD in biophysics, and he has a medical degree. And he spent the first day describing the mechanisms, the modes of actions of different pesticides, how they work in the field, and then he translated that to the human body and the impact that they have in the human body. And at the end of that day, we got back to our hotel room, and my father he wanted to puke. He wanted to vomit. As he was so sick in his stomach. He said, "We're going home. I'm returning all of my pesticide inventory. I am burning my pesticide distributor's license. We are not selling a single ounce of these toxins anymore." And it was that foundation, that dramatic shift in awareness that created the environment that he then gave me the permission, kind of this blank slate, to do whatever it takes to turn our crops around from a nutrition management perspective. I mean, that was the environment that was necessary for me to get this rapid hockey stick education curve, is because we had to figure this out. We wanted to figure it out.
And you had led so many people in your bioregion that you were leading them, and that's what you continue to do,
well,
right?
Because what happened, my dad's the distributor. He stopped selling pesticides, but he continued to sell everything else. And so on our farm, we have this really long driveway. The buildings are towards the back of the farm, and everyone that comes in our driveway is driving past our crops. So they can see on both sides of the driveway, they can see the reality of exactly what's going on. And they had seen, while we were using pesticides intensely, we had all this disease pressure, we had all this insect pressure. And it's true that the pressure was shared by other people in the community, but still, we had it very intensely. And that's in spite of us doing all these intense applications. And then they get to see the revolution. They get to see that in 2 years, not only have we greatly reduced or have completely eliminated our pesticides in a 2-year time window, but, well, actually it was in a one winter time window. We did a gradual transition in 2005 and then completely free in 2006. And they got to see that our crops were actually better off than they were before. And that was what led to so many farmers asking me for their support, to support them. They started bringing in leaves for tissue analysis. They started bringing in soil samples. And that was why by midsummer 2006, my dad said, "Look, you can either try to help people on their farm or continue to try to work on ours, but don't try to do both."
Yeah. Wow. That's fantastic. And so through that refiner's fire, it transformed that operation into an exemplar for the entire community.
Yeah, and it was not perfect by any means. I mean, we still had challenges, but it was very different. We no longer had the challenges that we did earlier without. It was I mean, obviously it was visually different because it caught people's attention in a significant way.
And so now this is what you're doing with AEA and
Yep.
Regen Ag
Yep.
and Kind Harvest. You're helping
I'm
the
having
larger...
so much fun.
Well, you've been through it. You went
Yeah.
through that
Yeah.
fire, and so all these people that are trying to transition, they're trying to
Yeah.
start off, you're able to help them.
Yeah.
That's just so incredible. And how long has AEA been operational?
Well, we started when my dad made that comment. It was, I forget exactly, but let's say June or July of 2006. And I felt the calling. I knew what I loved. I was having so much fun working with these growers. We were having so much success. I sat down at our kitchen table one evening in the middle of the summer, the busy season. You don't really have time to sit down. I sat down and I sketched out a picture of a logo, of what I wanted our logo to look like, with crayons on a piece of paper. And I got some invoices printed, and I called it Advancing Eco Agriculture. That was the start of a consulting company in middle of the summer 2006.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now it's a large team now.
Yeah, we have a team of 80 people, believe it or not.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
And you guys work with how many farms now?
Over 10,000 that we've worked with. Not all active at the moment, but that's how many farms we've worked with over the last 18 some years. And actually, if we sat down and did all the historical numbers, it'd probably be pushing 20,000 at this point. But it's over 4 million acres that we're working on right now.
That's amazing.
It's a ton of fun.
That is amazing. Oh, man. Wow. That is so good to know. And the reality is, folks starting out can take your courses. Folks starting out can call up AEA and get answers and get consulting.
Yeah, and that's, we have such an incredible team of people. And that's, I think, one of the things I'm most proud of is you can pick up the phone and you can call and talk to a live person. And I mean, obviously we have busy periods of the year. We have busy seasons when just agriculture, everything is intense. But it's very heartwarming and encouraging to me to hear the story of farmers that pick up the phone and they call AEA because they're in a crisis situation or because they want to change. And in a matter of days, weeks, sometimes hours, they have answers to their questions. Now, sometimes it's not the answer they want to hear, but it's the real answer. And that's the luxury or the beauty and the joy of having such a broad depth and range of experience is, we continue to encounter new things, but the majority of problems that most people face, we've already encountered. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of fun.
And it's so incredible the amount of information that you share and host. I mean, Kind Harvest has so much information in it.
Yeah. Kind Harvest is, I started the platform because it was just before COVID, and I participated in a couple of online courses where I saw people interacting in private Facebook groups, and I saw the exact same people interacting in a private discussion forum, and they were behaving completely differently. In the Facebook group, they would provide, one individual might provide very terse, direct answers, almost to the point of being rude, and the other forum provide very thoughtful, detailed 5-paragraph answers. And I realized that each of these platforms carries its own inherent ethos of what is considered acceptable behavior, and it shapes the way people show up. And I wanted to have a space in a venue for people to show up for those thoughtful, deep 5-paragraph conversations that aren't facilitated in the popular mainstream social media platforms. And so that was the inspiration for Kind Harvest. And we have the capability for everyone, all the participants, to flag any comment or any post. The first rule of engagement on the platform is be kind. Like, we have rules of engagement, and we have moderators that are prepared. Well, we started with moderators prepared to be enforced, and we still have a team that is there. But how many posts do you think, or comments, have been flagged since the beginning of Kind Harvest 3 years ago?
I'm going to guess it's zero?
It's zero.
Okay, I was going to say one or two.
One.
That's amazing.
But it's like, I put it in the name. It was very conscious and very deliberate. Kind Harvest. We have 6 rules of engagement, and the first one is be kind.
Yeah.
Be kind. And just putting that out there in the world and stating that this is the intention, this is the expectation, people show up in that way. They even though they disagree with each other, sometimes strongly, they still have the ability to be courteous. It's a different room. It's a different environment than mainstream social media platforms.
Oh, yeah, and it's also a special community. I mean, everyone's there for basically the same reason.
Most of the people, because of the fact that I started it, most of the people are intensive followers of our work, and they listen to the podcast. Many of them are doing SAP analysis. And so the discussions on how do I read this microscope analysis? How do I interpret this SAP analysis? How do I build earthworm populations? One of the most popular discussion forums is on how to develop cover crops for orchard systems, of how do you have perennial cover crops in an established orchard systems. And there are people contributing to this discussion thread in all types of environments, Mediterranean climates from around the world, tropical climates, desert climates, and it is so rich in knowledge and experience and information. It's like, I've never experienced that type of exchange of information on any other platform, live or in person. And what is so wonderful about this is that we can go to conferences and we interact with people and we learn all these things. We take a bunch of notes. Some of the things stick, some of them we forget. the beauty of Kind Harvest and these discussion forums is that the information remains. New people can join and they can go back and they can read the last 5 years of history of this discussion forum, and it's worthwhile and it's relevant. This is timeless information that is being shared and captured from the collective knowledge that all of us have. And so, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I was there at the start of it, and I've just been really impressed with the quality of interactions, but also in my courses, we've got discussions, we get into it, but the fact that you keep growing this, it's bigger than in one course, and it's a living document.
Yeah, when are you
to.
going to start moving your courses over to the platform? I mean, come on, Matt. Regrarians is moving over. Other people are going to start moving over.
Oh man, Darren definitely is a big influence, and you and Darren together, it's going to be hard. Oh my gosh. Well,
can you imagine Darren's bringing his entire Regrarians platform? They're all moving to Kind Harvest, and we have a couple thousand people at this point. It's going to continue to grow, and it's where all the best people are. It's like a little bit at the event that we're at right now.
Yes.
It's small. It's 130 people. And you and I have attended conferences together where there were 1,000 people or more. And sometimes it is valuable to have these smaller events because you have more focused conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have events that are difficult for people to get to, in terms of either a time commitment or something like that, when they require a bigger commitment, then people engage differently. They become much more engaged. And that's kind of what it's like on Kind Harvest. Kind Harvest is not free. People pay $8 a month to subscribe because I didn't want people to be the product. I wanted them to be the customer.
Yeah.
And so because it requires effort to be engaged, it requires effort to show up and to participate, the quality of conversation is that much higher.
And I mean, let's face it, $8 a month is basically free.
Well,
when a cup of coffee is sometimes more than that for people.
Well, it's all a question of priorities.
Right. Well, I hope that folks visit kindharvest.ag, right?
Kindharvest.ag, yep.
Yeah. I've got it as a bookmark on mine, so it's always just click it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for bringing it up here and for being there and for contributing to the conversations.
Well, at Our Future, this is a conference where I am always seeking to have folks be inoculated with hope, inspiration, and real actionable information. Yep. And that's what Kind Harvest is. Right. And everything that I talk about, a regenerative future, making the world a better place by being in alignment with the cycles, being in alignment with creation, you're an exemplar of that. And everything you do resonates with that. And it's been just a serious privilege learning from you and to be able to see your example. And I hope that folks really dial it in. And folks, if you don't know John, if this is the first time you're listening to John or learning from John, Regen Ag podcast, Regen Ag online courses, AEA, kindharvest.ag. Immerse yourself.
There's
because,
a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And it's such a gift. Yeah, and at the same time, you show people that you can walk into greatness with that kindness,
yep, with
that generosity.
Yep.
And it's empowering for the rest of us. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you. It's, it feels like a ministry. It's a passion. It's something that I almost feel like I couldn't not do it. And I love it. That's so much fun. But, I want to go back to where we started this conversation, talking about health and the health impacts. Yesterday when I arrived here at the event, someone said, they didn't say Happy New Year. We're recording this here. It was January 2nd yesterday, if I have my dates correct. And they didn't say Happy New Year. They said Happy New Era. And that gave me something to think about. Here we are. It's the beginning of 2025. A decade ago, I was asked to give a presentation at the Bionutrient Food Association event titled Agriculture in 2025. And I talked about the emergence of AI and robotics and in-field sensors and all the kind of stuff that we are right now on the threshold of. So I nailed some aspects of that, and I'm sure I was mistaken on others that I don't remember conveniently at the moment. But one of the things that I want to talk about is I want to encourage everyone to take complete ownership and responsibility for your own health. How many of us as gardeners or as farmers, how much of the food that we consume do we produce? Or do we know what its nutritional value is? And I want to encourage us to think about taking this to the next level, to another level. You know, when is the next bioengineered virus going to touch our population? I don't want to, we know now definitively that COVID-19 was engineered in a lab, and that it was released from a lab, whether that was accidental or deliberate. It seems like it probably may have been deliberate, but we don't need to speculate. The reality is that it happened. And it's reasonable for us to prepare and to expect that something like that is going to happen again in the future. How are we going to protect our families, our loved ones, the people we care about? How are we going to protect our community? And particularly, let's focus for the moment on those that we are personally directly responsible for, our families and the people that we love and care about. You know, it was in March or April after COVID. This still exists on my blog, so people can go to my blog at johnkempf.com and check out the dates. But somewhere in that time period, COVID was a couple months old. And I wrote a somewhat speculative blog post, and I said, we know that viruses can only propagate themselves in animals and even in plants when they are deficient in selenium. What if we approach this from a biofortification perspective and we supplemented with selenium? And what if we looked at the soil status of selenium relative to different populations? And I received some hate mail as a result of that blog post. But someone ran with that idea, or they had the idea on their own. I don't want to take credit for the idea, but a couple of months later, several academics published a peer-reviewed paper where they overlaid the map of Chinese soils and their selenium status with the major urban populations and COVID incidents. And there was a perfect match, that the cities that had the highest incidence of COVID were the cities that had the lowest selenium status in the surrounding region. Now, I don't think you could do that study here in North America because our food is too geographically dispersed. It gets spread all over the place. But they were still able to show that and to demonstrate that in China. And so we think about growing our own food in many cases in the context of removing toxins. We want to grow our own food that doesn't have the pesticide exposures. We want to grow organically, etc. But there is another level that I think all of us need to go to, and that is actually growing food that is biofortified. That's the scientifically correct, acceptable terminology today is to grow biofortified foods. What if, and so I have a small orchard for the family that is just starting to produce and to grow fruit. We have our own berry crops. We have several very large gardens. I try to grow as much of our own food that we consume as we possibly can. And those soils are amended with selenium and nickel and molybdenum and boron and zinc and manganese. I want to make sure that the mineral nutritional status that my family has is at abundant levels, so that we have this inherent capacity to be resistant to disease and to virus as much as possible. And there are intermediate things that we can do. As the orchard has been developing, and we're still obviously buying some of our own food, we buy our own beef, but I work with those growers so that I know what the nutritional quality is of the beef that we're getting. And we We get Brazil nuts, and we consume Brazil nuts as a source of selenium. I get macadamia nuts from Hawaii because I know exactly on those volcanic soils what the mineral content is of the macadamia nuts coming from Hawaii. So I'm being very deliberate and very specific about selecting food sources that are biofortified to enhance their own health. But this is something that all of us can do, and we need to grow it. When you look at the nutritional integrity of the broccoli that you can grow, I'm picking on broccoli because it's one vegetable that we consume in very large quantities at our house. But if you look at the broccoli that you can grow, and in our part of Northeast Ohio, I can have broccoli for a good 7 or 8 months out of the year without a greenhouse, versus what you can buy, it's not even in the same league. It's like comparing a kiddie league to the NFL. They're leagues apart. And so broccoli is not broccoli. We live in a different world from what we did 10 years ago. We live in a different world from what we did 5 years ago. It's no longer enough, in my personal opinion, it's not enough for my family. I'm not satisfied with just saying we're going to consume an organic diet of organic broccoli that we consume at the grocery store. That's not good enough anymore. If we want to be resilient to COVID and to other bioengineered viruses and other things that are likely to emerge in the future, we need to go to the next level and go to the next step of producing biofortified foods for ourselves and our loved ones. And then once we've done that, then we can start having a conversation about also doing it for the people that we are supplying with food. Who are we growing food for? We are supposed to be our brother's keeper. We need to be growing biofortified foods for the population at large, because there will be a growing number of people. COVID woke a certain percentage of the population up in a significant way. I'm not the only person that is very specifically buying macadamia nuts from Hawaii and buying Brazil nuts and consuming Brazil nuts. There is a growing number of people like that, and they are looking for, and will continue to look for, and pay premiums for, food that is of exceptional nutritional quality.
Yeah, I try to always buy the best food. It is so difficult, and it has only become more difficult over time in many places. California used to seem like it had more food options, more fresh food options. Sonoma County is like a place you can still find some things. But it's felt, especially going out to eat, things have devolved. The quality of what people is eating has devolved. And we have to go to this place called Local Pastures in right outside Austin, and to get real food. And it tastes different. It feels different. I think of when we were at Eco Ag and we saw Dr. Alan Williams show that figure where the regenerative dairy, the pasture-raised dairy, has 600 times the antioxidants than just the conventional, just the regular store-bought.
Right.
And oxidative stress is the root of all disease and all cancer. So going back to Dr. Alan Williams and talking about how 600 times the antioxidants in dairy, 250 times the phytonutrients in beef. Yeah, exactly. And it's you physically can't have 250 more bites of the degenerative beef physically and get that nutrition. It's a deficiency every time you eat.
Well, it's more than that, Matt. It's not just a difference of 250x. The difference is actually greater than what you might suspect from those numbers, because what you're considering now is the difference just on the upside, but there's also a difference on the downside, where the conventionally fed beef doesn't just it's not just that it does not have an anti-inflammatory effect; it actually has a pro-inflammatory effect.
Right.
So it might be 1,000x difference in the way your body responds. And, I'm very fortunate to live in a community that is by no means insular, but we come from a strong agriculture and agrarian background and a rural background. People still spend a lot of time with family, friends, community, outdoors, very active. They're still around horses a lot. And when COVID hit our community, yes, people got sick. Some people got very sick. Other people didn't become ill. Like, I know dozens of individuals who they might have had slight flu-like symptoms for a day. They never stopped working. They went to work. They worked right through it. And so, yeah, it hit them. So people want to challenge that and say, well, how do they know they had COVID? Well, they lost their 10 sense of taste, which doesn't happen with anything else that we know of, as far as I know anyway. And so they have a reasonable confidence that they had COVID, but they never stopped working. They never slowed down. And what was unique about their immune system that wasn't shared by everyone else? How can we protect our families in the future and our communities and the people that we care about? It's, in my opinion, we cannot, it is not wise of us to be passive. We need to start being proactive. And that means starting to work in your garden and grow your own food, use microbes, and use minerals. We have to establish, like, the foundation of nutritional integrity is microbiome integrity and mineral integrity. We can't we are not doing our job properly if we don't include iodine. We have to include iodine. We have to include boron. We have to include selenium and molybdenum. And whether that means we're using rock powders and seaweed and ocean minerals, or whether you are using, in my case, I want to be certain that I have enough. And so I'm addressing selenium directly. I'm addressing molybdenum directly. It's not expensive. Compared from a human health perspective, this is easy stuff to do. We got to do it.
I'm excited. So many people are just beginning this journey, and I'm so excited for the people to hear this, because I know, just like that room yesterday where only 2 people raised their hand who didn't have a family member who had cancer.
2 people out of 130.
The majority of us need this information. The majority of us are seeking, and maybe we don't even know we're seeking, but this is where it starts. And this is really the decision. When my wife had cancer, initially, I fought it, and I didn't know what to do until I realized that food was the only thing that was in my control.
Here's the funny thing. If you go to Google Scholar and you search for selenium and you pick a specific type of cancer, a cancer researcher told me this recently, and I went and looked. I didn't do the research as exhaustively as he did, but he said there are over 400 peer-reviewed published papers where the general consensus is that you have adequate selenium status, you will not have cancer. Hang on a second. Not only is it a cancer preventative, but it's also a very effective cancer treatment. It will reverse cancer. It's like, we should all want our family members to have an abundant selenium status. And that's not something you get by being passive about it. And it's also not something you get without addressing it. You know, we have this I'm going to call it dogma, this dogma within the regenerative agricultural world that, if you do things right from a microbial perspective, you use cover crops, you incorporate livestock, you stop disturbing the soil, and you build your microbial populations, then over time, they will release minerals that are inherent in the soil mineral matrix and make them available for your plants, and your plants will have adequate selenium status at some point in the future. In some geological regions, that's true. Maybe in 20 years or in 5. In other geological regions, that's not true. Some of our foundational soil geology doesn't have selenium to deliver, no matter how good the biology is. And most soils, in any region where you have decent amounts of rainfall, let's just say for the sake of discussion, greater than 20 inches a year, you're going to be deficient in iodine. It leached out decades or centuries ago. And you mentioned a family member that had her thyroid removed. If we want to have functional endocrine systems in today's endocrine disruptor polluted world, we have to have generous levels of iodine and boron. I mean, many people don't realize, we all realize how important iodine is for thyroid function and our endocrine system function, but the thyroid actually has higher concentrations of boron than it does of iodine. And when you look at the work that Richard O'Ree and others have done, the 4 nutrients that are systemically deficient across almost the entire population. I mean, there are individual anomalies, but by and large, the entire population is severely deficient in magnesium, boron, iodine, and selenium. Those are the big four that are at the foundation of most of disease resistance for us as mammals.
Well, I'm so grateful that you provide the ability for folks to bring this back.
Yeah, call AEA.
Yeah. Get that on your crops. Get that in your soil.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I am just so thankful. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for guiding us. And folks can learn so much more at is it regen.ag too?
No, regen.ag has been retired. We've shifted everything to kindharvest.ag.
Oh.
And that was the Regen Ag Academy that we shifted over to Kind Harvest. And so all of our online courses.
That's where I began with you.
Yeah, all the courses are now on Kind Harvest. And our company, Matt has referred to it as AEA, that stands for Advancing Eco Agriculture. You can reach out to us on our website. We have our products there. And call our team. They love to talk to people. It's 800-495-6603. Can't beat that.
Can't beat that at all. Thank you so much, John.
All right. Thanks, Matt. This has been fun.
Absolutely.